Greetings, friends. I'd like to welcome you to a news video here for a little bit of some current events and prophecy alerts, really. Um, and the biggest headline I'm going to be mainly focusing on is in the aspect of Revelation 13, 14 through 17, which basically, if you really look at it, you will be able to see when the mark of the beast will be enforced. In fact, we can see ever so clearly these things happening right now. And we're going to get into the headlines. I want you to pay very close attention to this, okay, because I think this is very important for us to understand. In Revelation 13, starting in verse 14 through 17, it states, "And deceiveth them who deceives them that dwell on the earth, by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast." It is the beast out of the earth. Okay, we know in prophecy a beast represents a kingdom or a nation. The beast out of the sea is papal Rome, without a doubt. There's the beast out of the sea and stuff like that. You can go and look at Daniel and these types of things. Now, after that beast received its supposed deadly wound, what nation? There's only one nation that rose up after that happened. And it states, "And I beheld another beast rising up out of the earth." The sea is represented by multitudes, peoples, nations, tongues, tribes, kindreds, and these types of things. The earth is a less populated area. Even though that, the land was populated, Native Americans and these types of things. Okay? But the only kingdom and the only nation that rose after that deadly wound happened, supposedly, was the United States of America. We received this Declaration of Independence in 1776, and in 1798, the papacy lost its papal states. And a couple years late after that, the United States was officially recognized by France as an independent sovereign nation. Okay, so this beast out of the earth is America. And what is America so called? America is a so-called Protestant nation now, isn't it? Alright, we're going to get to that in a moment. But I want you to pay attention here, because you hear a lot of these things about the economy and the middle class, being disintegrated. Okay? Which is true. To be middle class means to be independent. You work for the things that you have freely, without help from anybody above or below. That's why it's called middle class. You provide for your own. When you can no longer provide for your own, what happens? You have to rely on welfare. Or you have to rely on government aid. Because you are no longer making enough to sustain a living for yourself. And so hence that's why the middle class in America is sinking lower and lower and lower. All you got to do is just look up the statistics of how many people are on food stamps today, and these types of things, getting government assistance, all these types of things. Okay, now why am I bringing this up? Well, I'm going to show you something here, and I want you to really pay attention to it. Alright, everybody's so focused on microchips and these types of things, but they are really not really paying attention to something that's very important here. Alright? Revelation 13:14 through 17 states, "And deceiveth them that dwell on the earth by the means of those miracles which he had power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image to the beast." So who makes the image to the beast? So-called Protestant America, which had the wound by a sword. And what did it do? It did live. That's why it was a supposed deadly wound. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Okay, so the policies of the first beast is going to be mirrored by the policies of the beast out of the earth. That's what this image is. A lot of people think it's like some supernatural boogeyman that looks like the boogeyman Antichrist that's going to sit in a physical rebuilt temple in Jerusalem. I don't know where they get that idea, but I'm digressing. Let's move on. But basically, this is what this is that the beast out of the earth is going to exemplify an image to the first beast, meaning the policies of that beast is going to be mirrored by the second beast. You understand me? Okay? And those that don't go along with this, you will die. And this includes other nations that this beast out of the earth has put sanctions on, because these nations aren't going along with the policies of the image of the beast. "And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead." Now, notice, there are only two groups there. Small, great, rich, poor, free, bond. What's missing? What's missing? There's no middle class. There's only rich, poor, free, bond. So, when people are giving you evidence of the middle class dwindling, you really need to take notice of how close we are to a full fulfillment of Revelation 13. There's one nation in particular we're going to talk about in this video, but there is no middle road between small and great, rich, poor, free, and bond. There is no middle class here. There's only free, bond, rich, poor, and that's all it's going to be. Okay? Now, before I go back onto that subject, I want to switch gears here just for a moment, and I want to read you a couple of headlines here. This is out of RomeReports.com. Okay. Now, you really have to ask yourself this question. With all of these churches uniting together with the papacy, the Roman Catholic Church, and these types of things, really, you have to really ask yourself this question. Is the protest really over? Besides a remnant, that is. Well, you need to ask yourself that question, or answer that question, in your own thoughts. Pope meets with global organizations of Calvinist churches. The Pope met with the delegation of the World Communion of Reformed Churches, which unites about 225 Protestant churches in 100 countries, representing at least 80 million Christians. It's almost the entire planet there, folks. It's almost the entire Earth. The pastors visited Rome to hold working meetings with the Pontifical Council for Promoting Christian Unity. Unity is both a gift and a mandate for the church, quote unquote. Pope Francis said, quote, "Our meeting here today is one more step along the journey that marks the ecumenical movement, a blessed and hope-filled journey whereby we strive to live ever more fully in accord with the Lord's Prayer that all may be one." One of the fruits of this visit to the Vatican will be promoting various projects of social assistance, with Catholics and Protestants working together. The idea is to focus more on what unites than what separates. Okay, so now we're going to go to the Bible, and I want to tackle this whole thing with, because the Pope Francis has been spouting this off. Antichrist Pope Francis has been spouting this off since his pontificate began. Our meeting here today is one more step along the journey that marks the ecumenical movement, a blessed and hope-filled journey whereby we strive to live ever more fully in accord with the Lord's Prayer that all may be one. He's quoting from John chapter 17. So we're going to go to John chapter 17 and we're going to read it in context and see what Jesus Christ has to say. Because this is who we should be following, not the vicar of Christ. I would like to correctly rephrase that, the vicar of Satan, really. John 17, verse 9, "I pray for them. I pray not for the world, but for them which thou hast given me, for they are thine, and all mine are thine, and thine are mine. And I am glorified in them. And now I am no more in the world, but these," meaning his followers, "are in the world. And I come to thee. Holy Father, keep through thine own name those whom thou hast given me, that they may be one as we are." The only way that we can be one as we are, as Jesus states, is if we have a direct relationship to Jesus Christ alone. And how do we do that? Through His Word alone. Not through a mediator of a pope, not through any pastor, priest, but a relationship between Christ and His followers. What Pope Francis is doing is he's taking this verse and he's applying it to the entire world, believers and unbelievers alike. He's also doing it with the Protestant churches as well, okay? And the Protestant churches are going back to mama. Alright? 2 Corinthians 6:15, because remember we read this at the very end, it states, "One of the fruits of this visit to the Vatican will be promoting various projects of social assistance with Catholics and Protestants working together. The idea is to focus more on what unites than what separates." Okay. So we are not to be separate from Catholicism. We need to focus on the things that unites with Catholicism. What does the Bible say? 2 Corinthians 6:15 through 18. "And what concord hath Christ with Belial? Or what part hath he that believeth with an infidel? And what agreement hath the temple of God with idols? For ye are the temple of the living God, as God hath said, I will dwell in them, and walk in them. And I will be their God, and they shall be my people. Wherefore, come out from among them, and be ye united, saith the Lord." Does that say that? Or does it say, "Come out from among them, and be ye separate, saith the Lord, and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you, and will be a father unto you"? The papacy would apply that one to him, to itself, because the papacy considers itself the Holy Father. Okay? I'm telling you right now, that's what they would apply that to themselves. Because we all have to be in lockstep with Rome. Okay? We are to be following the Pope because he is the Holy Father of the Christian Church. But the Lord said, "Come out and be ye separate, saith the Lord, and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you, and will be a father unto you, and ye shall be my sons and daughters, saith the Lord Almighty." Now, and then we have this one here. Out of Crux, Pope's outreach to Protestants to hit new heights in Sweden. Now, even though the 500th year anniversary of the Reformation doesn't commence until 2017, it looks like they're going to start doing things a little early. The trip, scheduled for October 31st through November 1st, will be a two-city stop, according to information released on Wednesday by the Vatican's Pontifical Council for Promoting Christian Unity and the Lutheran World Federation. Pope Francis' outreach to the Protestant world will hit new heights this fall when he makes a two-day trip to Sweden to participate in ecumenical events marking the 500th anniversary of the Protestant Reformation. The trip, scheduled for October 31st through November 1st, will be a two-city stop according to information released. Folks, for the most part, yes, the protest is over because nobody is protesting anymore. Why was there a Methodist church? Why was there a Lutheran church? Why was there a Pentecostal? Why were all these core denominations started? Because there was a protest and they came out. And now these churches are going back in. So, which tells me, for the most part, that this protest is over. Now, obviously, there's always a remnant. There is a remnant. And the dragon is wroth with that remnant. Okay? And as I stated before, in Revelation 13:15, he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Which means go along with, be in subjection to. Well, who are those that are not going to be going along with this image of the beast? Go back up to Revelation 12:16 and 17. And the earth helped the woman. And the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth. And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, which keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. God's commandment-keeping people, as well as those commandment-keeping people that have the testimony of Jesus Christ, will adhere to the verses that state, "Come out and be ye separate." And they will not go along with what Revelation 13 states about worshiping the image of the beast. So what is going to happen to this remnant? Persecution. That's what's coming. What else is coming? The middle class is going away. And there's a nation right now that is a perfect example of this. And we're going to take a look at this right now. I'm only going to read, for the most part, the headlines. Okay? And that nation is Venezuela. Let's take a look at it. Venezuela's state of emergency, how the country slid into crisis. Protests that rocked the Venezuelan capital over the weekend are the latest signs of a simmering crisis that's threatening to boil over in the South American country. Okay, so there is a state of emergency in Venezuela. Why is there a state of emergency in Venezuela? Well, let's just keep on moving. Out of the Washington Post, there has never been a country... Pay attention to the wording of this headline. There has never been a country that should have been so rich but ended up this poor. That should have been so rich but ended up this poor. So what does that do with the middle class? Takes it away. Well, who is responsible for taking it away? Venezuela goes from bad to catastrophe. Until the country has a government that can build a sustainable economic system, its misery will only deepen. The country's financial straits have led to shortages of basic goods and energy. Out of CBS News, Venezuela's middle class is dumpster diving for food. So is something happening to the middle class here? See, the middle class was a result of the protests that happened during the 16th, 17th, 18th century. The middle class, you can thank the Protestant Reformation for what we have as the middle class today. And so what is one of the main things that the Vatican is lock, stock, and barrel wanting to get rid of? Because if they can get rid of the middle class, then they have total control. And with the beast out of the earth, creating an image to the beast out of the sea, guess what? They are helping, and they are working in unison to make sure this happens. Now, if you look into some of the history with Venezuela, Venezuela is, mainly is a communist country. Now, during the Cold War, what was really the battle that was taking place? It was between communist Russia and America and the papacy under Pope John Paul II. And what was the result of that? Economic sanctions now, wasn't it? Starving Venezuelans loot grocery truck, eat from trash. Where's the middle class going? Venezuela recalls top diplomat in U.S. over sanctions. Now, I'm going to read a portion of this article because this is really what it boils down to, okay? The announcement comes days after U.S. President Barack Obama extended an executive order that imposed sanctions on top Venezuelan officials and declared the South American nation a national security threat. Maduro decried what he said was a long history of threats of the U.S. empire against Venezuela. Now, so what's going on here? Because this South American nation is declared a national security threat, which is why Barack Obama extended this executive order. Because Venezuela is not going along with the powerhouse, so to speak. And if you don't go along with the processes and the procedures of the beast out of the earth, you are not going to be able to trade. You are not going to be able to export, import from other nations. And so therefore, your nation is going to starve. That is what economic sanctions is. And you can kind of backtrack all the way back to 70 AD. And what happened to Jerusalem? When a nation laid siege on a nation, they surrounded that nation to the point where nothing comes in, nothing goes out. And so what happens is the people starve. And so when you're seeing headlines like this, middle class is dumpster diving for food, you're getting rid of the middle class, now you're just having rich and poor. Starving Venezuelans loot grocery truck, eat from trash. Right? A State Department official said in the United States hasn't yet received an official notification of the diplomats' recall from the Venezuelan government. This is what the official says, quote, "We continue to have diplomatic relations with Venezuela and remain willing to engage with all sectors of Venezuela, including the executive branch," the official said. Quote, "The United States continues to support democracy, stability, and prosperity in Venezuela and the region." In his letter announcing the extension, his executive order last week, Obama said he did so because the situation in Venezuela had not changed. So again, you either go along or you're going to suffer. Do we not see this being fulfilled? And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in the right hand. Folks, if you do not go along with the image of the beast, which is brought forth from the beast out of the earth, if you don't go along with the policies, you are not going to be able to trade. You are not going to be able to buy or sell. You will starve to death. You will die. You will be persecuted. The situation in Venezuela described in Executive Order 13692 has not improved, including the government of Venezuela's erosion of human rights guarantees, persecution of political opponents, curtailment of press freedoms, use of violence and human rights violations, and abuses in response to anti-government protests, and arbitrary arrest and detention of anti-government protesters, as well as the exuberating presence of significant government corruption, he said. Venezuela and the United States expelled each other's ambassadors in 2008. And there you have it. So while you have this push for unity within these churches, you also have the political sphere, which is the exact duplicate of the politics that is at play in the Vatican, because the United States makes an image to the beast. And the policies that the beast promotes are the same policies that America promotes, because it is an exact image of each other. And if you do not go along with these policies, economic sanctions. Do we also see that happening here within our shores? Why, certainly we do. I made mention of it earlier. Is the middle class being depleted? Absolutely. Go and rent yourself maybe a one-bedroom apartment. At like $600 or $700 a month. And get yourself, a manufacturing job somewhere and see how easy it is to do everything on your own without the help of government aid and welfare. It's very hard. Very, very hard. Was it always like that? No. Absolutely not. And so, are things getting better? Does it really matter who wins the election this year? No, it does not. Because when all is said and done, you gotta remember, there are only two groups: rich, poor, free, bond. And that's your timeline. When you see the middle class totally depleted, that is when your mark of the beast is going to be enforced. And we can see a perfect example of that happening in Venezuela. And don't apply the normalcy bias into your brain thinking that it's not going to happen here, because it will happen here, and it's already happening. All you got to do, again, is look at the welfare state. Look at how many people are on food stamps. Look at how many people are under government aid. They can't support their family without the help from the state. A true middle class wouldn't need help from the state. Wouldn't need to be dependent on the state. Because a true middle class would be able to provide for their own without any help. You don't see that in this world today. Because it's being depleted. And the middle class was one of the fruits of the Protestant Reformation. So now do you see why it is one of those things that needs to be cut off? And once it's cut off completely, then your mark of the beast will be enforced. Because there will only be rich and poor, free and bond, small and great. And if you do not go along with the policies of that image of the beast, you will die. Now, you're going to stand strong and like with what Martin Luther said, that it is a light thing to die for the word, because the word once died for us? Or are you going to end up being so lukewarm to the point where you're going to tuck your tail in between your legs and go along? Because that is exactly where we're coming to. It's exactly where we're coming to. And this little portion here, right here, you can really see this being fulfilled right before our very eyes, and people don't realize it because they are too hooked up on prophecies that are not even close to being scriptural. But it's happening right in front of your eyes, and hardly anybody sees it. And it is discouraging at times. It really is. This is all I got for you as far as these news and current events. All the headlines will be posted in the description box below. And until next time, truth be told, truth be known, stay safe. God bless. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.